Chapter 511, Exposed. If we adopt that cynical mentality of yours to analyze this interaction, it appears as if he is showing off his knowledge, as well as inspiring people to induce a good impression on them. However, if we take a normal approach to this, even I will explain that all in a similar fashion, Sword Demon said candidly. True, let's continue our observation, Gu Fei replied. The two men continued to secretly follow Broken Water Arrow. They saw their target going around the jungle in a pre-established route. Every place he passed had groups of players training, and Broken Water Arrow would watch them before passing a few constructive criticisms afterward. His words and actions were exactly as what Sword Demon had said, and could be considered as nothing unusual. Of course, it was also possible that he could have ulterior motives if anyone adopted Gu Fei's cynical view, but proper evidence would be required to prove this. Gu Fei and Sword Demon were stalking this man entirely in hopes of making such a discovery, but what they witnessed and overheard lent nothing more to it. Did you discover anything? The two were a little tired from all this stalking. Hearing Broken Water Arrow address another band of players, they did not immediately follow the man. The two leaned against a tree and lifted their heads up to look in the sky that they could not see. Sword Demon's left hand lifted to his lips, his dagger wedged between his two fingers, as if he were smoking. Absolutely nothing at all. Sword Demon sighed. We simply don't have the expertise for such things. Gu Fei had to admit that, while Sword Demon was a gifted gamer and he was a kung fu expert in their respective fields, they had no idea on how to go about conducting such things like evidence investigation. They just did not have any experience in this. Perhaps if they had someone with this particular set of skills with them, he or she might have already discovered what was suspicious from the words and actions that Broken Water Arrow had shown thus far. He or she would not be like Gu Fei, who let his prejudice toward the man result in Gu Fei mistaking Broken Water Arrow's goodness as ill will. What do we do now? Sword Demon asked Gu Fei. He had come up with the idea of stalking their target, but it appeared as if they had failed in achieving anything from it. I doubt we will discover anything if he continues to go around teaching everyone in this jungle, Gu Fei said. Maybe he might head off to somewhere else and meet others? I don't think there's a need for this. All he needs to do is send a message, Sword Demon said. How troublesome, Gu Fei sighed. Messages can be sent between players without anyone knowing, so if any secrets were divulged within those conversation, none would be the wiser about them. Hey, are we still following or not? He's about to get out of range. The two men hiding behind the tree were only taking a break, but they were still keeping an eye on Broken Water Arrow. Honestly, Gu Fei did not seem to be in any bit of a hurry. This guy is only just a simple mission to you, and he does provide plenty of help to Deepwater's guild. What the man is doing now is irrelevant to your quest. If you slay him, he will still be able to keep helping the guild. There's no way he will know it's you if you cover your face, nor will it affect your relationship with Deepwaters and the rest. There's no need for you to bear so much psychological burden for the kill if it's just about completing your mission. I know that. But I'm no longer concerned about the mission now. If your inference is correct, that this person may have ulterior motive toward Deepwaters and Coco's guild, then I must stop him, Sword Demon said. Then, I suggest you look for young master. I feel that he's the one who can be of the most help in this situation right now, Gu Fei concluded. Alright. Sword Demon nodded. DSK. It's for the best if that lousy guild of his collapses. Why should I lend him a hand? Needless to say, the location where Gu Fei and Sword Demon found young Master Han was a tavern in Linian City. The entire city was designed to look like a quaint village with its rural architecture, and the tavern was no exception. The atmosphere pervading the city made it seem more backward than any other cities they had been to, and young Master Han's mood was evidently adversely affected by this. The man did not even think of flinging a scathing remark the moment the two approached him about their problem. Gu Fei originally wanted to drop a line or two to persuade the man, but Sword Demon beside him acted as if he had not heard young Master Han's rejection and continued to give their account of what they had observed. According to Miles, this Broken Water Arrow has a build of someone who has undergone rigorous combat training. By sharing his expertise in jungle warfare and comprehension toward the setting of traps, plenty of members in Deep Freeze admire the man. What's so strange about that? This is nothing more than exhibiting the talent you have in the real world in this game. There are plenty of players out there who are way stronger than the average gamers. Isn't there one sitting right next to you? Young Master Han was of course referring to Gu Fei, a man raised in Kung Fu. He took to the bloodshed in this world like a fish to water. That may be the case, but, I know what you're worried about, young Master Han interrupted. Using such a method to take down a guild from the inside, while very devious, would indeed be the most effective way to do so. Sword Demon did not say a word. Gu Fei looked over to his eyes and realized that his gaze was very distant, as if he were recalling something. Furthermore, what young Master Han had just said seemed to have a sort of meaning to it. Did this have something to do with that something that had happened in their past? I know you disagree with my view about what happened then even now, but I still insist, that's definitely a premeditated affair, and it's not unlike what you claim. Everyone arguing to the point where fellow brothers became estranged. Young Master Han said. What is this about? Gu Fei hurriedly butted in to ask. Something that happened in game before. Sword Demon merely said this line and did not bother to elaborate any further. Actually, Gu Fei could more or less deduce what it was from the two men's simple exchange. Mostly likely, it was about Sword Demon's guild, when a popular person like Broken Water Arrow must have affected it, causing the members to turn against their leader Sword Demon and finally causing the guild to disband. Young Master Han believed that it was a premeditated attack with the guild's disbandment as the end goal, while Sword Demon believed that it was a result of internal conflicts that devolved into irreconcilable differences. Of course, there were plenty of details to this issue, but Sword Demon clearly did not wish to talk about the matter, so Gu Fei did not bother to pry any further either. While he might occasionally take shots at others, Gu Fei only made sure those were harmless jokes, for he would never intentionally take joy from mocking someone's pain. Do you think there's anything suspicious about this Broken Water Arrow? Gu Fei brought the conversation back on topic. He doesn't need any point of suspicion. In a guild, nothing is a bigger taboo than someone who can grab the limelight and be more popular than the guild leader. As the saying goes, a mountain isn't big enough for two tigers to roam. If Deep Waters doesn't understand this, his guild will ultimately either split or disband. However, given that man's personality, he will most likely be foolish enough to simply cede the position of being the guild leader to that man, and he may even consider himself as being chivalrous and magnanimous. Young Master Han said. That's fine, it isn't a big deal, either. There was nothing great about the guild leader position, so Gu Fei did not consider it to be anything of a loss. The guild leader is the soul of a guild's temperament is entirely influenced by the guild leader. Randomly changing the guild leader in such a manner means changing the guild's atmosphere, style, and standards. Only an irresponsible person will casually hand over the position of the guild leader to someone random. Even though this is just a game, it isn't a simple position to be in. Plenty of your comrades and friends would be watching your every move. To toss the position away by saying someone else is more fitting be the guild leader may seem like a very chivalrous thing, but it actually snubs plenty of other people. Do you know that? Young Master Han said. Wow. Gu Fei had no idea if he should sit or stand after hearing this. Feeling entirely uneasy, he tentatively inquired, Is that you there? Is that the young Master Han I know? To think someone as diabolical as you can say something like this. Is there even such a thing as heavenly justice? Go back and tell Deep Waters, if he is still clear-headed, kick that man out of the guild as soon as possible. Even if the man does not harbor such thoughts, the situation may sometimes develop in a way where things may not go according to a person's wish. Young Master Han continued. If it does not go according to a person's wish, will it go according to yours, instead? A voice suddenly came from elsewhere, causing the three men to turn in one direction. They were shocked by what they saw. Gu Fei and Sword Demon exchanged glances, for they had never expected to see Deep Waters here at this time. Plus, it seemed as if he had overheard what they were all discussing. Oh, it's you? You came just in time. These two guys here are worried sick for you. Young Master Han did not seem to be in the least bit embarrassed or awkward. It was truly admirable how this man could show a look of disdain no matter the circumstance he found himself in. Deep Waters did not say a word and quietly walked over to the table where the three men were seated, staring at Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Before Gu Fei could even react, Deepwater's hand shot forth and took off the cloth covering Sword Demon's face. Holy fuck! Young Master Han was the man who yelled, for Sword Demon looked all the more surreal now that he had that face paint on his face. What's the meaning of this? Deepwaters asked as he clutched the cloth covering Sword Demon's face moments ago. Broken Water Arrow is my mission target. I wanted to find out what sort of person the man is, Sword Demon replied. Mission target? I seem to have heard you guys suspecting him of something else, right? Deepwater's tone was calm, but Sword Demon knew that they had never had such a calm conversation. Everyone would usually be cursing or laughing, wearing their emotions on their shoulders. That's right. I suspect he has other motives for joining your guild. Sword Demon was a man that dared to own up to his actions. Is that so? What sort of motives? Deepwaters asked. I have no proof, just a suspicion, Sword Demon replied. Is that so? Did you have to do all this? Deepwaters shook that hand still holding that piece of cloth. Sword Demon was silent. We're old friends, Deepwaters said. If you truly have such suspicions, you can just tell me directly about them. It's because it's merely just a hunch, which is why I don't wish to affect the relationship you two have. I want to find it out for myself in secret. Sword Demon's words were sincere, and he had a sincere look as well. Unfortunately, the face paint on his face covered everything. Should I be thanking you, then? Deepwaters asked. Sword Demon had no words. Old Broken. Deepwaters suddenly yelled. To Goofy and Sword Demon's surprise, they saw the door to the tavern get pushed open by Broken Water Arrow, who walked to their table. Unperturbed, condescension was in his eyes. I have a few friends here that have a few misconceptions about you, come and explain things to them. Deepwaters said. There's no need for explanation, time will prove everything, Broken Water Arrow said with indifference. Well said. Deepwaters clapped Broken Water Arrow's shoulders hard. Time will reveal how people conduct themselves, time will indeed be all the proof needed. Deepwaters threw that cloth on the table and turned to leave. Chapter 512, A Difficult Decision. You three, enjoy your drinks. Broken Water Arrow swept his hand grandly before leaving the tavern in the wake of Deepwater's footsteps. Wow! Look at that guy, see how crafty he is. Goofy tried to ease the lingering tension in the air. Actually, just like Goofy and Sword Demon's faces, Broken Water Arrow had face paint smeared on his as well. As such, they had no way of seeing how he looked. Young Master Han was silently gazing at Sword Demon. Sword Demon slowly picked up the cloth Deepwaters had thrown on the table and folded it neatly. Placing it back into his dimensional pocket, he stood up and took a deep breath. I'll go wash my face, he said before leaving the premise under the two's gazes. Failing to steal the chicken after losing a handful of rice one. Young Master Han, who was back to his usual self, uttered this in a mocking tone. That bastard, we did underestimate him a little. Goofy nodded. While it was possible for Deepwaters to appear in this tavern entirely due to coincidence, the fact that Broken Water Arrow was with him made it highly unlikely. Back in the jungle, Goofy and Sword Demon did stalk Broken Water Arrow for a while before they gave up and went to find young Master Han in the tavern. For Deepwaters and Broken Water Arrow to show up in this tavern following Goofy and Sword Demon's arrival here, no matter how they reviewed the matter, this happenstance reeked of contrivance. That man probably realized that we were following him long ago but did not make any move toward that end. He only called Deepwaters over when we did something else and caught us with our pants down, Goofy asserted. That's clearly how it went, young Master Han agreed. He did not have to say a word and just made sure Deepwaters would hear and see it for himself. Nothing would be more convincing than that. Sword Demon is clearly doing this for his sake. Doesn't he get that at least? Goofy asked. Of course, he does, but he can't stand Sword Demon suspecting Broken Water Arrow because he already considers that man as one of his brothers in arms, young Master Han explained. Is it so easy to form a brotherly bond like that? Goofy expressed his disbelief. Indeed, that is precisely that fool's biggest weakness, he casually trusts others readily, young Master Han said. Naive. Very naive, indeed. Goofy sounded like an elderly person the way he criticized the man. With that, he got up. I'll go look for Broken Water Arrow. Forget about the rest, I'll just slay him before we discuss this further. It's useless. Young Master Han shook his head. Using violence is not the solution to this. If you kill Broken Water Arrow, it'll just worsen the relationship between Deep Waters and Sword Demon. I know, I wasn't being serious. Gu Fei said. What can we do? Actually, we don't have to do anything, young Master Han said. We'll just have to wait till Deep Waters Guild undergoes an upheaval and that fool will naturally realize his stupidity. Young Master Han continued to drink his liquor. True. Gu Fei nodded. How rare it is that I actually 100% agree with your solution. Sadly, someone else doesn't, young Master Han remarked dryly. Sword Demon? Gu Fei knew who he was talking about. As young Master Han nodded, he became quiet. What do you think he'll do? Gu Fei asked. He'll probably look for Coco now. Don't tell me she isn't involved with you two's action? Young Master Han stated. Can this also affect Coco and Deep Water's relationship? Gu Fei wondered. Now you know just how serious this problem is. Is Deep Waters only believing Broken Water Arrow and not anyone else? Gu Fei was astonished. I said it already, right? This isn't an issue about trust. He simply hates people harboring suspicion regarding his friends. Everyone has a bottom line, and you two have crossed his, explained young Master Han. From what you've said, I am becoming more convinced that Broken Water Arrow has considered Deep Water's personality before making his move to his guild. There's no way someone who has befriended Deep Waters for only a handful of days will have such a thorough understanding of him. It's obvious that this man came prepared for his task. He did his homework about Deep Water's weakness, Gu Fei said. That's right, that is why, with Deep Water's gullibility, that guy essentially is his worst nemesis. There's no doubt he will simply end up ceding his position to the usurper, believing it to be the perfect outcome, young Master Han said. Yeah. After Broken Water Arrow has control of the guild, whether he chooses to disperse the guild or kick Deep Waters, he'll just do whichever choice that benefits him the most. Considering people's tendency to shirk responsibility and blame others, even those previously supporting Broken Water Arrow will nationally blame their ex-guild leader Deep Waters for passing the position to him. After all, passing the position over to Broken Water Arrow means that Deep Waters trusts the man the most. Gu Fei continued to speculate. When the crowd accuses, young Master Han began. Only the death of men diffuses. Gu Fei finished. Don't you feel that this is a really enjoyable conclusion? Young Master Han asked. Too enjoyable. But it'd be a lot more enjoyable if that's the fate waiting for Broken Water Arrow. Do you have any ideas? Gu Fei asked. Antics like this should be young Master Han's strong suit. Nothing yet for now, young Master Han replied thusly. Gu Fei was glum. Actually, he had thought of hounding Broken Water Arrow like a shadow and slaying the man until he no longer had the ability to execute his so-called plan. But after hearing young Master Han's words, even if that would prevent Broken Water Arrow from succeeding in his schemes, it would still aggravate the friendship between Deep Waters and Sword Demon. Gu Fei was not afraid if Deep Waters would only bear hatred toward him, but he would most likely implicate Sword Demon as a result of his action, so he could not simply go ahead with such an irresponsible act. So troublesome, I'll go take a walk around. Gu Fei sighed and got up from his seat. Whiling his time away in the tavern was not the way to go, either. Life must go on no matter how troublesome things were, so the game had to carry on as well. Under the canopy of a huge tree beside Linian City, Sword Demon was sitting quietly. The face paint on his face was already gone and the guild emblem and the camouflage outfit were neatly kept inside his pocket. Soon, Coco came hurrying over from the jungle. You said he's already aware? Without wasting time to greet each other, Coco immediately broached the topic. Sword Demon nodded, not saying a word. Coco was despondent, too. No one was more familiar about Deep Water's personality than her. She had already anticipated the reaction Deep Waters would have upon uncovering this matter. Otherwise, they would not have done everything in secret and could have told Deep Waters directly about their suspicion toward the guild's new recruit. This is so annoying, Coco said. We're just playing a lousy game, yet there's so much trouble. How did he even find out? It's probably Broken Water Arrow. He probably noticed us stalking him and called Deep Waters to follow us in return. Sword Demon was no fool, He had also come to the same conjecture as Gu Fei and young Master Hans. The only difference was he had not reached this conclusion from the most devious angle and had even given a logical explanation for Broken Water Arrow's action. I believe that this man has been pulling the strings as well, Coco said. The problem is that Deep Waters doesn't believe this, Sword Demon said. Of course, he wouldn't. Even if the evidence is right before his eyes, there's a chance he'll doubt its authenticity. You should be very clear about this since you're essentially just like him. Sometimes, I really don't understand how you guys can lie to yourself to such a degree. What's the point of that? Coco asked. The fact that you don't get us is precisely why you're not like us. Sword Demon answered. I don't have the time to idly talk about such philosophical matters with you. Ugh, this is just so vexing. Now, what do we do? Coco asked. I'm here to warn you in advance, he'd most likely guess your involvement in this. Of course, he will. Just look at your outfit and face paint. Wait, why did you wash it off after all the hard work I put into doing it? Coco's words were cut short by this discovery. Of course, I washed it off since it's useless now. What a waste of my time and effort. Then, where's the emblem I gave to you two? Don't you dare toss that away. I spent a large amount of money getting those made. Coco said. It's over here. Sword Demon handed over the fake emblem and the camouflage outfit to her. Toss that outfit away. I'm irritated just looking at it. What's the point of this jungle warfare thing? It's not like I've got nothing better to do. Coco flicked her hand dismissively. Has Deep Waters looked for you yet? Sword Demon asked. I don't know. Coco replied. We don't have the time to sulk, it's best we hurry and think of a solution. Sword Demon convinced. Who's sulking? I really don't know. When you messaged me about Deep Waters already being aware of what you guys are up to, I immediately blocked the man. Until this matter is resolved, I don't want to see him, it's so irksome, Coco informed. But how do we solve this? Sword Demon looked up in the sky. Just let that Broken Water Arrow destroy the guild. Let this be a lesson for Deep Waters, Coco snapped. That's not the way. Sword Demon was somber. A guild belongs to everyone, and it should not be a sacrificial pawn. No matter what the situation is, the guild can't be wagered. So what else can we do? Coco's hands were spread open, shrugging to show her helplessness. Sword Demon was quiet for quite some time before he finally came to a decision. I'll kill Broken Water Arrow. What? Coco was shocked. She was well aware what doing something like this would mean. With how the situation stood, this was as good as severing ties with Deep Waters and making an enemy out of their whole guild. However, we have no idea how many times I'll have to kill Broken Water Arrow before the man gives up. If he holds on until the end, Deep Waters is sure to keep helping the man given his personality. As such, if Broken Water Arrow does not disappear, he'll forever be a hidden danger even if we take him down to level 10, Sword Demon said. Hey, let me ask you something. Are you being serious? Coco fixed her gaze onto Sword Demon. I am very serious. Sword Demon met her eyes. You know what this means, right? Coco asked to clarify. I do. Sword Demon betrayed just a sliver of pain in his expression. This clearly meant that he would no longer be friends with Deep Waters. Coco continued to stare at the man, staying silent for the longest time before turning her head away. I know that no one can change your mind once you set a course of action. You will have to make a decision on your own since it's your business. I've already made my decision, but do you think that this is the most effective solution? Sword Demon asked. You're asking me this? Coco asked back. Be honest with me. Alright. Honestly speaking, this will be effective, Coco admitted. But the moment you begin your attacks, and Broken Water Arrow gets killed a number of times, his role will then change to a pitiful worm that is seeking asylum from the guild. He will lose the reverence others have for him. In fact, some people may feel annoyed at this constant fight. Furthermore, since MMOs are forever dependent on levels, too huge a gap would cause these people to eventually ignore him out of habit. At such a time, what other chips will Broken Water Arrow be able to use to win back the hearts of the other guild members? Chapter 513, A Deeper Analysis. That is a very accurate analysis. Sword Demon nodded in agreement to Coco's words. Still, you should know that I don't wish for you to do anything like that, Coco said. I know, which is why you should treat this as me merely completing my daily mission. Sword Demon turned to head into the jungle after he had said this. He was just about to venture in when he stopped. Oh, yeah. No need to tell anything to my comrades, either. I refuse. Coco said this and left in the opposite direction, showing her back to Sword Demons. Gufei was walking along the muddy streets of Linian City. The lush greenery in this city lent a serenity that was out of this world. Furthermore, the purity of the air made it utterly relaxing and refreshing. To think a wonderful place like this would have such a troublesome matter happening. What made this all the more annoying was the fact that this matter mainly impacted Sword Demon. Were this Gufei's problem, he could have free rein on how solve it, but precisely because it happened to be someone else's business, it made him feel anxious and powerless to achieve anything. Mister, I have equipment straight out of the forge, would you be interested in getting some? Hearing someone ask this brought him back from the depths of his thoughts. It was rather amazing that someone had managed to get so near him without him even realizing it. However, he had never seen someone peddle wares like the flower girl one. Gufei thought of this and turned his head to check the person out, only to be greeted by a familiar face. Why is it you? Gufei said. I should ask you the same question. Standing beside Gufei was, astonishingly, Zaixioshin. What are you doing here? He observed his surroundings, looking to see if there was any victim within the vicinity that was hunting her down. It's rare for me to travel so far out here, and since there's no group activity holding me back, it's only natural for me to visit and sightsee the various cities of Parallel World, she stated. No city would welcome a walking disaster like you, he said. That's not necessarily true, for I often contribute to the market's thriving economy in the game. It is you, however, that has caused huge sweeping changes across the 5 unyielding experts and 10 great adepts with just this one trip. These level losses have something to do with you, right? Zaixioshin said. I have a clear conscience, Gufei said. So do I. She laughed. Gufei no longer had any words. A swindler would never feel ashamed of his or her action, so it only made sense for Zaixioshin to be unburdened by guilt. This was a warped logic, but there was no rebuttal to it. Once more, he felt the urge to give her a good beating. Speaking of which, your emotions are very exposed. That's dangerous as it gives people like me a chance to capitalize on them, Zaixioshin said thusly. Gufei had also made sure to remove the camouflage paint on his face after leaving the tavern. Who would be willing to continue having their faces smeared when there was no longer any need for it, anyway? Is that so? Then, I'm sorry for making you worry about me, Gufei said rather indifferently. He was just about to leave when he heard someone go whoa, whoa, whoa. The speaker then drew nearer. Whoa. This is too much. Everything has become like this, yet you were actually still in the mood to flirt with the ladies, you rascal. Coco came stomping out from an alleyway as she made a beeline for Gufei. Where's Sword Demon? Isn't he with you? Gufei looked around but did not spot the man anywhere. I was just looking for you guys. Sword Demon is about to kill off Broken Water Arrow, Coco said. That's great. Where is he? I'll head over to help. Gufei instantly perked up after hearing this news. Great, my foot. Think of the consequences of such an act. Coco berated. Gufei wrinkled his eyebrows. He and young Master Han had already deduced what would be the likely outcome of killing Broken Water Arrow. But if Sword Demon himself had made such a decision, it only meant that he was willing to forego his friendship with Deep Waters just to protect the latter and his guild, right? That guy. Gufei had no words for the man. He did not know if he should be touched by his actions or call him stupid. We need to find a solution, a perfect resolution. Coco stared at him imploringly. I take it that you want us to find a solution where Sword Demon won't have to make such a sacrifice yet still prevent Broken Water Arrow's schemes from coming to fruition. Gufei made a summary of her request. Yup. Coco looked earnestly. I'm not too, Gufei answered. Oi, how can you still crack a joke at a time like this? Coco was infuriated when she saw his cavalier attitude. If the situation runs its course, your guild might collapse as a result of Broken Water Arrow's scheme, but Deep Waters would see Sword Demon's sincerity to him. Meanwhile, hunting down Broken Water Arrow might prevent him from destroying your guild, but Sword Demon would ultimately lose Deep Water's friendship. That's an option Sword Demon choose, and we both know how he most likely came to the decision without even a moment's hesitation. I'm sure he won't regret it as it leads to the conclusion he's hoping for the most. Maybe it's best if we respect his decision, Gufei said. What are you talking about? He was forced to make such a decision as well. Do you really think he wants this? Coco demanded. Lady, surely, you know that it is precisely because there isn't a perfect resolution to this matter that he had made such a decision. If there's a perfect solution available, why will we be standing here like idiots? Gufei asked. There's gotta be a solution. Coco insisted. Reality is sometimes cruel. He was helpless. Sorry to bother you. Unable to bear it any longer, Zizuyoshin interrupted the two. The topic you two are discussing sounds really profound. Do you mind telling me what's all this about? I might be able to help. Who are you? Coco asked. A swindler, Gufei interjected. Coco was perplexed, yet Zizuyoshin was unperturbed, even proudly adding, and a professional one, too. Gufei flared his nostrils and spat to display his disdain. Calling herself a swindler was already shameless enough. The fact that she actually felt pride toward the title made it really intolerable for him. Say. Zizuyoshin pointed to him as she spoke to Coco. If even this man is unable to do anything about it, it's obvious that the trouble you're in is something where violence isn't the solution. Perhaps what you need is a bit of knowledge and smarts. Do you really have a solution? Coco asked. Don't be clutching at straws out of desperation. Gufei warned. The two ladies gave him the side eye, each exuding a thick killing intent. This is what happened. Coco gave a quick rundown of the entire situation to hear. It's too unprincipled, Gufei muttered at the side. So that's what's going on. Zizuyoshin nodded his head. It's evident that the opponent this time has already homed in on the personality of this foolish guild leader. That's why he managed to tailor such a scheme that specifically targets your guild. Taking advantage of your guild's desire to emerge victorious in this upcoming city war, he presented something of great value to earn a favorable impression and expectation from the people involved. Once in, he strove to elevate the members' feelings for him to the point where they trust, depend, and even worship him. At the right time, this man would be able to replace that stupid guild leader's position in a single move. Such a plan would usually take a long period of time to come into fruition in real life, but because everything happens at an accelerated pace in games, and with how the skills of an individual can be very intuitively experienced by others, all it takes is a month for everything to reach the current stage. Your analysis is very well put, Coco commended. Of course, she's demonstrating her skills to earn your favorable impression and trust. Gufei pointed out. Nobody cared to bother with a man. Coco hurried to add, oh, and that foolish guild leader you keep referring to is my hubby. Is that so? He's quite capable to have developed the largest guild here in Linian City, Zizuyoshin remarked. Wow. Seriously? Gufei was astonished. Was it not a little too obvious to instantly change her stance about deep waters from foolish to capable? One more thing, did you just say that this plan needs a month? Coco asked. Zizuyoshin nodded. Considering the environment a MMO provides, a month is already considered to be fast. But if the city war starts in a month's time, and he has yet to ruin our guild, won't that mean all his effort is for naught? Coco asked. You're mistaken. He's not trying to ruin the guild but to usurp it. Instead, he may not even reveal his intention to do so even when the city war begins. He'd seek to use your guild's manpower, material, and financial resources to obtain victory in this city-wide event. Consider this. Who will everyone think has the greatest contribution if you guys win that war? Zizuyoshin asked. Gufei and Coco involuntarily looked at each other. Now that he has your trust, has become popular, and has even made large contributions, becoming the guild leader will be as easy as pie. After that, I'm afraid whatever benefit or boon you gain as the guild in control of the city will simply be irrelevant, Zizuyoshin said. Indeed, that's the epitome of a perfectly crafted scheme, Coco agreed. Zizuyoshin shrugged. Also, how can you say for sure that he's the one who discovered you guys tailing him? It's possible for him to have accomplices. Accomplices? Coco was stunned. This sort of plan, especially in games where guilds exist in a relatively simple and casual environment, Needs helpers. There's bound to be a bunch of people who have infiltrated your guild with him. That's to make sure to spread word of his existence and to promote his status among the players time and again. If he is being extremely cautious, it's not impossible for him to designate a few men to take note of his surroundings as he goes about doing his business, Zizayoshin said. Gufei was shocked by this. While they were stalking Broken Water Arrow, the man kept to the small fringe groups within the training region. There were players all around them, so avoiding the gazes of those men were not possible. That was why the two could only focus on avoiding detection from Broken Water Arrow as they continued to act as if they were passing by or in the middle of training when others saw them. It would not be all that strange for some of those people to act as Broken Water Arrow's eyes upon discovering their true intention. Speaking of which, Gufei and Sword Demon were careful enough during all that and kept at least a 10-meter distance from their target. Gufei had been wondering just how Broken Water Arrow detected them, so the explanations Izayoshin gave helped answer this perfectly. I don't recall other players joining the guild with Broken Water Arrow, Coco said. Joining together will too conspicuous, so I doubt he'd do something like that. But members who have joined the guild a short time before or after are all suspicious, Zizayoshin said. Hey! Gufei suddenly recalled something. Don't rice soup and white sand fit the bill? Those two were new additions to the guild. It would make sense if they were Broken Water Arrow's accomplices. They must have exposed themselves the instant Coco introduced them with their bogus identities to Broken Water Arrow. No, it can't be those two, Coco denied immediately. Actually, it doesn't have to be a recruit. It can also be longtime members who have been lying in wait inside the guild. There's also the possibility of someone getting bribed, too, Zizayoshin said. Bribed? Gufei found this situation getting more and more ridiculous. That's right. If the mastermind is a workshop or other profit-based organization, bribery won't be off the table in terms of the actions they take, Zizayoshin added. Chapter 514, Memory Black Box. If we're dealing with a workshop, they would be more than capable of giving benefits that normal casual guilds won't be able to provide, Zizayoshin said. I understand. Coco nodded. A workshop and a guild were two entirely different organizations. Simply put, a guild was a group where players gathered in pursuit of entertainment, a fellowship of sorts. Even if a guild reached the top of its game like Deep Freeze, it would only provide a mental satisfaction, and the resources and benefits it could provide would just be limited to within the game world itself. Meanwhile, a workshop was completely different. As an organization that focused on profit, there were clear and defined roles and groups for the players, with members earning actual income in real life. As such, it was easy for them to recruit members temporarily to their side with something more tangible like actual real-world currency. Few people would not be tempted in the face of such naked profits. Oi! Have you come up with a solution after all your analysis? Gufei asked. It's got to be perfect. You know what I mean by perfection, right? Coco added. Zizayoshin smiled gaily. Wait. What are we waiting for? Both Coco and Gufei were puzzled. Since you guys said that this person is the real deal, why not make use of his talents and find people to disguise as players from other guilds, who are supposedly seeking revenge by ambushing and hunting down core members of Deep Freeze, after he helped the guild achieve victory in the upcoming city war. Of course, these men can pretend to mess up assassinating your hubby and the other targets as they viciously go all out against Broken Water Arrow, swiftly dropping his levels. By that time, no matter how outstanding his skill is, without the level to supplement it, there's no way he can convince the rest of the guild of his capabilities. I do believe not even an imbecile will accept a level 35 player as a guild leader, right? As long as those men you send do not reveal their true intention, I do believe that your hubby won't suspect your hand in this. What do you think? Zizayoshin was staring at the two once she was done speaking. Gufei and Coco were speechless. While they were contemplating on how to prevent Broken Water Arrow from succeeding in his schemes, they had never once thought of going with the flow and using the man a little before throwing him out of the guild heartlessly like the mongrel he was. That'd truly be a very pleasurable idea. Coco nodded. Still, that won't reveal Broken Water Arrow's evil intention to deep waters, so it's not going to be of use in patching things up between you guys. Gufei was a little skeptical towards Izayoshin's suggestion and was always thinking of details to nitpick. The perfect resolution you previously mentioned doesn't seem to include the need to repair the relationship between the involved parties, though, Izayoshin countered. True, but it'll be all the more perfect if that can be achieved. After picking at the bones of the problem, Gufei intentionally created further complications for her. If they wished to repair the cracks in the friendship between Deepwater's and Sword Demon, they would have to show Deepwater's convincing evidence about Broken Water Arrow's real character. But since they were unable to tail the target, further investigation and evidence of the man's intention would be extremely difficult to obtain. This made it significantly more troublesome than simply causing Broken Water Arrow to lose several levels. Ah, that's right. Lady, do you have any ideas about this? Emerging victorious in the city war isn't particularly important, so there's no need to bother with that, Coco said. If that's the case, how far do we have to go before we can convince your man of Broken Water Arrow's scheme? Izayoshin asked. Well, he's occasionally very clever, but a real blockhead in certain matters. Honestly, no matter how much evidence we uncover, we don't have any choice if he insists on not believing them, Coco replied helplessly. Don't tell me that when the whole thing's come to light, he will act like this. Izayoshin proceeded to grab Gufei's collar as she yelled, Bro, tell me it's not true. You probably just have some sort of hardship, right? Will he be like that? Hey! Gufei slapped her hands off himself. The sullen Coco let out a rare laugh as she shook her head. I don't know about that, but I doubt it would be that cliché. Still, it's really difficult to get to such a point, and there's a large amount of risk involved with it, Izayoshin said. Do you mean to say you've come up with an idea? Coco was elated. Broken Water Arrow should be from some workshop, so if we pass ourselves off as someone from another workshop looking to poach his talent, we may be able to test the waters in the process. We might even be able to find out if there's any flaw we can exploit, Izayoshin said. Yes, and somehow arrange for Deepwaters to be somewhere nearby to overhear the conversation? Coco asked. She believed that this solution might work if they could get Deepwaters to accidentally stumble into the exchange. I'm just worried that this man will be too cautious by choosing a location that makes it impossible for anyone to eavesdrop, Izayoshin said. Then, what should we do? Won't it be all for naught if Deepwaters isn't able to witness it? Gufei asked. Have you guys heard of this spell called Memory Black Box? Izayoshin asked. The gaming noob Gufei naturally shook his head, whereas Coco's eyes shone. I know it. It's a spell that can record everything in a certain area, be it sight or sound, and seal it in a scroll. The moment the scroll is unsealed, the user will be able to watch the recording. Are you suggesting that we use this spell to record the conversation with Broken Water Arrow? Is there really such a thing? How come I've never heard of it? Gufei was confused. HMPH. All you boys know is bloodshed and slaughter. Such skills and spells are useless when it comes to combat, so how would you know? Coco disparaged. That should only be a backup plan. It would be for the best if we can get your hubby to watch it live, but if that proves to be impossible, we can always use this other method, Izayoshin said. But the problem is that I've never heard of anyone having such a spell in Parallel World. Coco said. It won't work even if you do know someone, since only I and Broken Water Arrow will be present at the location. We will have to obtain a usable skill scroll to advance our plan, Izayoshin said. I'll go find out, Gufei volunteered. The two stared at Gufei strangely when they heard the tone of confidence in his voice, wondering if he had some amazing method. In no more than 20 seconds, they heard him say, Nope. That's too fast. The two ladies were perplexed. Yeah, I asked Svelte Dancer, and since she doesn't have it, then no one else should have it, Gufei explained. No one would really care for such an item, so even if someone happens to get one, they will likely use it without a thought. They might not even be up for sale on the market, Izayoshin surmised. So, what monsters drop such a scroll? Coco asked. I'll go find out. Gufei was at it again. Who are you asking now? The ladies already figured out how he operated. Brother Assist. Gufei answered unhurriedly. The man was the best candidate for such information. Sure enough, the two ladies did not make a noise after hearing that name. Brother Assist was a man who had all sorts of information at his fingertips, So even he had his time to shine. Memory black box. What is the use of that spell? Brother Assis wanted to know about everything. It's really useful, just tell me where it drops. Gufei prompted. I've never paid attention to this item before, so I got to go do my own inquiries, Brother Assist said. Hurry. Gufei urged. Sure. Brother Assist was not in the least bit annoyed by such a request, since this was the joy that he got from gaming. He delighted in the gathering and searching of information, especially if it was something that other players needed. Having a player like Gufei ask something like this was something very satisfying to Brother Assist. Sit tight, I need to log off and inquire about an item that Miles is requesting information for, Brother Assist said to young Master Han after his exchange with Gufei as the two men were sharing the same table at the tavern. That guy? What is he inquiring about this time? Young Master Han knitted his eyebrows. Memory black box. He must be working to solve that matter you mentioned earlier, Brother Assist answered. Memory black box. Young Master Han seemed to have heard of this before as well. Is that guy trying to lure the snake out of its hole? I'm taking my leave first. Brother Assist waved at him. Go on. Young Master Han bobbed that glass of liquor in his hand, a gesture of sending him off. Brother Assist is on it. I believe we will get an answer very soon. Gufei announced to the two ladies. If even Brother Assist was unable to find information about this, then it would truly be a little problematic. Nonetheless, since Coco was aware of such an item's existence and Brother Assist have apparently heard of it before, it seems like this skill scroll was not some secret item, so acquiring it should not be too difficult. Well, while we wait for that information to arrive, why don't you two tell me in detail about this broken water arrow person? Ziziotion suggested. Before we go on, isn't there an even more pressing issue we need to attend to? Gufei asked. Eh? They stared at him. Has Sword Demon made his move yet? Gufei asked Coco. Ah! Coco covered her mouth in horror. Sword Demon had indeed left for the jungle. After sending a message to Sword Demon and going back and forth a few times, Coco was angry to the point that she was stamping her feet. That dullard thought I'm trying to trick him. I wouldn't even give a damn if he's dead or alive if we didn't come up with a real solution here. Where is he? Gufei asked. He entered the jungle, but since no one told him of broken water arrows coordinates, he should be unable to locate him fast, right? Coco asked. The area you guys have cordoned off isn't exactly huge, so it's hard to say for sure. Forget it, I'll go search for him myself. You two carry on. Gufei turned and ran. I'll help you get broken water arrows coordinates. Coco shouted after his departing figure. Okay. Gufei answered as his figure continued to recede in the distance. Ah, crap. Coco suddenly slapped her forehead. I didn't add him as a friend. Do it now. Ziziotion said. He's turned off permissions for invites. I'll inform him. Ziziotion sent a message to Gufei. Coco's friends list was indeed full, but she could no longer spend too much time thinking about this and just casually picked a few names to delete to add Gufei. She sighed in relief only after the deed was done. Turning to look at Ziziotion, she was momentarily dazed as she thought of something. Lady, what's your name? Ziziotion. I must really thank you for all this. Coco was very grateful. You're mistaken. I'm not doing this out of the kindness of my heart. Rather, I just find this whole situation to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to swindling that broken water arrow. This is my hobby, after all, Ziziotion said. You have quite the unique hobby there. Ha. Nobody liked swindlers, but Coco found it difficult to hate the self-proclaimed lady swindler, especially since she was helping them with the current circumstance. Still, to actually treat a crime as a hobby, is she insane? Coco wondered this to herself even as she asked, what do you wish to know about Broken Water Arrow? Chapter 515, Ambush. In the jungle near Linian City, Gufei was running at top speed as he sent Sword Demon a message. Hey, don't make any move yet. We came up with a plan. System notification. The user you are trying to reach is not accepting any message at the moment. Gufei had no choice. He originally thought that Sword Demon would believe him based on his usual temperament, yet it turned out that the latters had decisively turned off his messaging. That guy. Gufei sighed even as he ventured further into the jungle. The jungle was poorly lit underneath the lush canopy, and the lack of light made it hard to make out anyone in the gloom. But Gufei was clear that while he could not see anyone, it did not mean that there was no one else around. He was already near Deep Freeze's training grounds, so there might be players hiding within the shrubbery. Who knew when they would suddenly pop out and give him a fright? Just as Gufei thought of this, he heard the rustling of the surrounding leaves. Are they showing themselves? Gufei emotionlessly swept his gaze around him, and sure enough, he spotted several camouflaged members from Deep Freeze. All stared at him as they questioned, "What are you doing here?" "I'm looking for someone," Gufei answered, his footsteps not stopping as he continued his way into the jungle. These men had not seen someone so belligerent and quickly drew their bows. "Stop right there. Who gave you permission to enter?" Gufei was not in the mood to bother with them right now, so he did not even turn around. Rather, he quickened his pace even more as he ventured deeper into the jungle. These men were all stunned, having not expected something like this to happen. Usually, in such cases, the other party would stop walking when asked such a question to properly explain themselves. This person, in contrast, treated them like air. As such, they were temporarily stumped on what to do. "Quickly stop that man!" Someone finally reacted. As the team placed in the outermost area, they were naturally in charge of stopping outsiders from disturbing the training and level grinding of their guild mates. Many players, who came here to grind as well, would turn back once they learned that a big guild had staked their claim of the area. Who would be foolish enough to attempt xing monsters from an entire guild? Anyway, the current intruder acted differently. However, everyone present quickly came to the conclusion that there was a very good chance this man was there to cause trouble. The group yelled as they gave chase. These men had been spending months of their in-game time among these trees, so they were very used to running in such a terrain. Of course, the same could not be said about Gufei, who was currently experiencing a significant reduction in his movement speed. It was apparent that he was no match for them in their home turf. However, the greatest advantage this terrain provided was how easy a player could hide themselves here, so Gufei activated his blink and materialized right behind a tree. These men all halted their steps and rubbed their eyes furiously. All of them saw the intruder run and then suddenly disappear into thin air. They suspected that they had problems with their eyesight, but quickly realized that that was not the case from the bewildered look they shared. "What happened?" they all asked. "Did he disconnect?" Someone guessed. Blindsided by his action, that was the only plausible answer to the phenomenon that they could think of. These men proceeded to dash right up to where Gufei had disappeared and surrounded that spot. "We'll slay him immediately the moment he reappears," the leader ordered. "Roger that." Everyone copied. Meanwhile, Gufei was long gone from the area. Coco managed to learn Broken Water Arrow's location and quickly passed it over to Gufei. Although Sword Demon did not have this information, no matter what method he resorted, Gufei was sure that the man would eventually find his target. As such, he could only hope that Sword Demon would only bump into Broken Water Arrow after he did. However, based on the commotion he had caused from his action, Gufei felt that he had acted too rashly and that there was a genuine necessity for him to disguise himself. With such a thought in mind, Gufei once more donned on his camouflage outfit. Although he had washed his face paint off, wearing a hat and tying a cloth to his face were acceptable disguises people often used, which he believed the other players should not make a fuss over it. More importantly, he made sure to pin the counterfeit emblem on his chest prominently. This had a remarkable effect when he mixed himself into another group of men. No one seemed to suspect a thing about him. Having been successful in avoiding potential interruptions, Gufei no longer had any reservations as he sprinted toward Broken Water Arrow's location, which Coco had told him of. Sure enough, the man was still there teaching a bunch of members. Even Deep Waters was right beside him. If Broken Water Arrow was seen as trash that people would find disgusting on sight, then Gufei considered Deep Waters to be a disobedient child, feeling the urgent need to give the man a good beating. Such matters could wait, though. At the very least, he should first follow Deep Waters until Sword Demon made contact. Sword Demon had been going in and out of the jungle, and each time he had been accompanied by a different set of emotions, but never had at once been more complex than what he was feeling right now. After a few simple replies to Coco, he adjusted the settings of his account to reject all incoming messages. Having come to this stage, He no longer wavered in his decision. Glancing at the dagger in his hand, Sword Demon took a sharp breath and really wished he had a cigarette in hand. Once he was relatively near Deep Freeze's training grounds, Sword Demon entered stealth and crept his way deeper into the trees, taking care of his footfalls while keeping an eye out for movement around him. Everywhere around him seemed to be an area where some team might be using to train. Sword Demon was hoping to locate such a place right now. As long as he could find a team around, or anywhere with a trap formation set up, it would represent an area Broken Water Arrow would soon visit to give pointers. As long as he had his eye on any team and patiently waited, he was bound to cross paths with Broken Water Arrow. While such a method was rather dull, it was sure to be successful. This was Sword Demon's never-changing style, doing things he had confidence in and saying words he was confident of. Soon, he came across a team that was busy with their drills. What they were doing was akin to the sort of things Onesie and the others were doing back then. This should do. Sword Demon muttered to himself as he began to take a closer look at the terrain in the area. He trusted Goofei's assessment that Broken Water Arrow was a difficult opponent to tangle with. To go up against such a foe, Sword Demon was convinced his overlevel skill, Shadow Mist Assault, was the key. Now that he could wield the attack power of Lasting Sentence and Dying Breath with his dual-wielding mastery, Sword Demon believed he would be able to insta-kill the man as long as his attack made contact. He might have the power to insta-kill his target, but he must make sure to hit the target first. If the attack fell through, and Broken Water Arrow did have the deft and skillfulness that Goofei possessed, Sword Demon was well aware what would be the outcome he could end up facing. Thus, he needed to closely examine and understand his surroundings. Sword Demon proceeded to conduct his observation and even went as far as to physically check the lay of the land. There were obvious advantages and disadvantages to using his Shadow Mist Assault in a jungle setting. The way the trees prevented the sunlight from filtering through them made the surroundings very similar to an area with heavy fog. As such, the situation of Sword Demon's shadow remaining even after turning invisible, which Gu Xian had previously observed, would not happen this time. Meanwhile, the obvious disadvantage of the setting was the hodgepodge of hindrances on the ground, which it would surely affect the speed at which the Shadow Mist Assault could work. He needed to survey this area properly to improve upon the strengths of the terrain while avoiding the shortcomings. Besides that, Sword Demon was also considering how he could escape unscathed after slaying Broken Water Arrow. Once the latter was present, the team in this area would surely receive him accordingly, so Sword Demon was not necessarily be going against just the man himself, but he also had to wrestle with the problem of beating a retreat under the very noses of all those players. He was not exactly afraid of death, but being able to retain his level meant he would be able to preserve his combat strength, which would then let him kill Broken Water Arrow twice, thrice. Perhaps I should wait until Broken Water Arrow departed, so the target would have a moment of being by himself, which I could take advantage of to strike. Sword Demon mulled over this. While this would prevent him from being surrounded, he might lose the upper hand in terms of the location that they were in. Sword Demon gazed at the terrain he had previously been observing and calculated. Finally, he decided to stick to the original decision and stage his attack here. He was at least confident of having higher chances of success in his assassination attempt. As for how he could safely extricate himself, it would all depend on the reaction of these men. Maybe, if he was fast enough, they might not even realize what had happened before it was too late. With every detail of the plan ironed out, Sword Demon chose a position to wait. Sometime later, he saw the team of players before him lure monsters into their trap formation and kill them off wave after wave, but Broken Water Arrow was still nowhere to be seen. Sword Demon was not impatient, however. He believed that as long as Broken Water Arrow was online, he would eventually make his round over in this location. What if he has gone offline, though? Such a possibility suddenly popped into his mind, causing him to scratch his head as he was overwhelmed by his notion. This was also a huge problem. How embarrassing would it be if it turned out that Broken Water Arrow was not even online despite all the planning and preparation he had done? With such a thought in mind, Sword Demon was about to allow messages to come through so he could contact Coco and confirm the status of his target when he spotted a figure moving toward this area from afar the moment he lifted his eyes. Is that him? Sword Demon was not certain, but he had a sneaking suspicion about this man's identity. In any case, even if it was the real broken water arrow, Sword Demon had no way of confirming this since the man had his face paint on. That was why he had chosen this method to camp out like this. He wanted to make use of the others to identify broken water arrow. If he were to go around searching for the man himself, he suspected that he might not even recognize broken water arrow even if he walked right past him. As the figure drew closer, he saw the team of players training in the area begin to appear one after another from their hiding places, as if they were ready to receive the person. "It's him," Sword Demon confirmed to himself as he took note of the approaching figure. He started choosing the position he would be mounting his assault from. But just as the entire team revealed themselves out in the open, Sword Demon was abruptly left in a daze. That was because two players, instead of just one, came forward. While the other was also in disguise, Sword Demon still recognized the man to be Deep Waters. This unforeseen factor had left Sword Demon at a loss on what to do. He was mentally prepared to assassinate Broken Water Arrow, yet never had he thought he would have to do it right in front of Deep Waters. He had no regrets when he made his decision, but with Deep Waters standing right before him, he could not help but waver. If he were to attack now, he would be breaking things off in the presence of Deep Waters, and that was an entirely different matter altogether. Chapter 516, The Familiar Indomitability. Everyone had a long day. While Sword Demon was hesitating, Deep Waters and Broken Water Arrow started warmly expressing solicitudes to their comrades as the two men stood side by side. Unfortunately, the members of this team did not reply with platitudes, like everything is worth it when done in the service for the guild, which made their original statement to seem somewhat less than perfect. But Broken Water Arrow's positioning is simply too perfect. It was so perfect that Sword Demon was moved by it. The man had positioned himself at such a distance that he would feel guilty not to utilize his Shadow Mist Assault. Speaking of guilt, Sword Demon was also inflicted with guilt now that he had to do the deed in front of Deep Waters. Still, since this was a choice he had made, he would bear the consequences of the ensuing fallout. From the moment he had made such a decision, he had already opted to ignore what Deep Waters would think. Therefore, it was not particularly important whether he was present or otherwise at the moment, right? Besides, if he were to consider the purpose of the action he was about to take, doing it right in front of Deep Waters would make it all the more effective, as this would clearly show to Broken Water Arrow his determination to this matter. "Even if Deep Waters misunderstands me, I will still make sure that your schemes don't succeed. It's time to act." Sword Demon steeled his resolve after these few seconds of thought. Shadow Mist Assault. The moment the skill was activated, it was as if there was an explosion of air as a figure darted forward. The unique glow of lasting sentence, dying breath left a captivating sight as it streaked through the air, accompanied by him bursting forth at a high speed. "Who's there?" The crowd involuntarily yelled out as Sword Demon was 2 meters away from Broken Water Arrow. "Disappear!" The figure abruptly disappeared, leaving everyone in a state of confusion. Was it an illusion? Could they have all imagined that someone was racing right toward them? None of their thoughts could keep up with what was happening, as in the next second when that figure disappeared, Broken Water Arrow suddenly came hurtling out, and that figure appeared before them once more. Sword Demon. Deep Waters gritted his teeth when their eyes met. "Guild leader." The people who were quite a distance away anxiously shouted this when they saw that Broken Water Arrow had been struck and Deep Waters was just an arm's reach away from this interloper. Sword Demon found his clear answer when he saw the look of shock, anxiety, and concern from these people. He was all the more convinced that he had made the right choice. While he did share a friendship with Deep Waters, a guild would play host to even more friendships to Deep Waters, and there was no way he would let Broken Water Arrow ruin that for everyone. This final knot in his heart got untangled, yet Sword Demon was unable to reveal a victorious smile, for he knew that the attack he had just launched failed. Broken Water Arrow's reaction time was shockingly quick. Having judged that he was the target of Sword Demon's attack, the man instantly acted to block and evade the attack the instant Sword Demon appeared. Even though Broken Water Arrow was sent flying by the strike, Sword Demon was positive he had been unable to apply maximum damage. Being sent flying unlike that could have been a method to mitigate the ensuing impact of the blow. With the current attack power I possess, Perhaps I don't need to apply my maximum damage just to insta-kill Broken Water Arrow. Sword Demon held such hopes since his target was a low HP archer. However, even after the man was sent flying out into the underbrush like that, the familiar white light of death did not appear. It was such a pity, yet there was nothing he could do about it. Sword Demon knew he would be unable to take on Broken Water Arrow directly if his ambush failed, as it was apparent that the man's dexterity was much scarier than what he had expected. Nevertheless, Sword Demon was not disheartened by this outcome. If he failed this time around, he could always try again. While many thoughts surfaced after he struck Broken Water Arrow, there was not even a single second of delay in his actions. To be killed after a failed attempt, Sword Demon had no wish for such a heroic assassination tale to happen to him. He had every intention of preserving his own level to better pounce upon Broken Water Arrow a second time, a third time. Activating his fleet foot, Sword Demon turned around and ran off along the escape route he had already planned out prior. However, shortly after taking a few steps in the planned direction, he heard a crisp sound. Sword Demon's heart tightened, as he felt a similar tightening sensation with his foot. It's a trap. Yet this was a route he had carefully scouted. Sword Demon was certain that there had not been a single trap laid along this path. Sword Demon turned around and saw that Deepwater's bow was still pointed at where he was standing, an expressionless look on his face. It's his snare shot. Sword Demon sighed to himself, well aware that Deepwater's possessed such a skill. Sure enough, it was a bad idea to go ahead with his plan with that man present. The latter's presence became an unforeseen variable. The corners of Sword Demon's mouth curved into a grimace. Now that Deepwater's snare shot had seamlessly connected to his foot, he had no choice but to bear the consequence heroically. He watched, immobile, as the enemy archers knocked arrows to their bows and released them in a flurry toward him. The only regret Sword Demon had when he closed his eyes was that it would be much harder for him to kill Broken Water Arrow next time after losing a level. He heard the whistling of arrows on flight, yet Sword Demon did not feel the twinge of pain that came with being shot, nor did he receive the system notification informing him of his death. He gingerly opened his eyes and saw a black figure standing right before him. It was a familiar, indomitable, an impressive figure. Wearing too much really gets in the way of movement. This man was complaining as he pulled out an arrow stuck on his shoulder. But at least some good came out of it. His left hand shook loose the camouflage windbreaker covering his mage robe, and a bunch of arrows steadily dropped to the ground. Everybody was dumbfounded at this sight. This man actually made use of that piece of clothing to roll up all the arrows the archers fired off. No matter when or where Goofy ended up in, the level of dexterity he demonstrated would always leave people's thoughts in disarray. I'm not in the best of mood right now. Tossing that camouflage clothing away, Goofy pulled out his sword and flourished it. Moonlit Nightfall's tip brushed over the ground and sent the dried leaves and detritus flying, carving out a beautiful circle in a single swipe. This is my sword cordon, step in it and die. Once upon a time, Goofy had similarly made such an arrogant declaration. His purpose then was to intimidate the others to have an easier time escaping. This time, however, he was being serious. He did not care if it was Deepwaters that stepped through. He would treat any player that crossed it as an enemy without exemptions. Fuck. Who are you trying to bluff? Someone immediately rebuked. A single lightning struck from the sky, and that man disappeared. This isn't a bluff, this is strength. Goofy's sword was still pointing at the location where the speaker had been standing moments ago. The bows these players held trembled. Would an arrow we fire off be considered as stepping through that sword cordon? Everyone subconsciously wondered about this question. Naturally, wrestling over semantics like this would be meaningless, for that man that had put on a brave front before did not even get anywhere near the cordon, yet he was still insta-killed with impunity. No one dared to make any hasty movements. They all turned to look at Deepwaters. Did you still think you guys can escape? Do you know how many of us are here in this jungle? Deepwaters knew it was time for him to speak up. Do you know how many players I can kill before you guys can finish me off? Goofy went tit for tat. Silence. As a guild leader, you need to think about the safety of your comrades, Goofy reasoned. The moment he heard the word comrades, Deepwater suddenly recalled Broken Water Arrow being sent flying moments ago. The man quickly turned over in the said direction. Don't bother looking for that man. He's already back at the spawn point. He positioned himself far too perfectly, I could not resist contributing a slash to him, Goofy said as he turned to glance at Sword Demon. You won't blame me for interrupting your quest, right? Nope. I can always try again. Sword Demon smiled. That's true. Goofy nodded, turning to face their opponents again. Guild Leader Deep Waters, the two of us are leaving now. Stop us if you dare. Just remember to remind them to only confront me if they don't fear death, so that they won't end up blaming you for getting killed. Goofy and Sword Demon turned to leave without saying further after this. Guild Leader. The other players could not stand this sight. In a moment of impulse, each of them was hallowed with a sense of fearlessness or death. Deep Waters shook his head. This isn't the best time for this. Decimating 1,000 soldiers at the expense of 800 of our own, we can't bear such a monumental loss at the moment. Don't forget that we've been devoting all our efforts to the upcoming city war. We'll talk about such trouble at a later date. Okay. They answered. Inform everyone else not to provoke them. A single team is no match for the two men, Deep Waters said. Roger that. The men present had witnessed the indomitability of the two men, Sword Demon's sudden strike and Goofy's insane prowess along with that insta-killing thunderbolt that came with a single raise of his arm were not things any average player could achieve. Indeed, there was no way they would be able to finish those two men off even if a team of 10 or more players from Deep Freeze cooperated. Thus, the two of them strode off under the stares of Deep Freeze's members crouching and hiding in the dark recesses of the jungle. Why are you here? Sword Demon asked. I came looking for you, bro. Goofy answered. There's no need to persuade me. Sword Demon easily guessed what Goofy was here to do. Not that, we came up with a new plan. Goofy gave him a brief rundown of what was discussed. Oh. Sword Demon was nationally more than happy to also unmask Broken Water Arrow, so there was no reason for him to reject such a plan. But who's going to do it? Brother Assist? Sword Demon asked. The choice of the candidate would be the key to the success or failure of such a plan. Neither of them could do it as they had already come face to face with Broken Water Arrow. There was no telling if they would find out even with their faces covered, and the risk was far too great. Aside from them, the only ones that they could trust were the other three players from Young Master's Elite. However, War Without Wounds and Royal God Call were far too untrustworthy for this task. Their personalities were far too unsuitable for this sort of work that demanded surgical precision. That left Brother Assist as the only man up for the task. No, we've got a professional. Goofy ruefully expressed. Do you remember that lady that stole your dagger a long time ago? Despite that incident being almost 500 chapters ago, Sword Demon could still remember every detail vividly. It left him an indelible impression as that was the moment his trust in Goofy began to form. That woman? How did she get herself involved? Sword Demon was perplexed, for Zizzy was a total stranger to him. I bumped into her on the street. Later, when Coco came to reach out to me, she overheard Coco and I discussing this issue and eventually came up with this solution. Strange, huh? However, we have no idea where to look for that skill scroll, memory black box. Brother Assist is off to find out more, Goofy said. Oh. The two men had made it back to Linian City in the time that they conversed. Alright, go look for the ladies and see how the plan is coming along. Goofy waved to Sword Demon. Where are you going? Sword Demon asked. It was apparent from Goofy's action that he was parting ways with him. I'm logging off, bro. I've already spent a long time searching for you in Linian City. Look at the time already. I've still got work tomorrow. Goofy waved goodbye at him before he turned to leave. Sword Demon was left staring at that familiar, indomitable, and impressive figure walk further away, before disappearing when he rounded a corner at the end of the street. Chapter 517, Deceptive. Coco and Zizzy had not been standing out in the open street talking this whole time, of course. The moment Goofy left, the two casually found a tavern, sitting in a corner to discuss things in depth. Even though she had blocked Deep Waters, Coco still had access to her guild channel. She would take note of it from time to time, knowing full well that the channel would burst with activity once Broken Water Arrow became a victim of the assassination. Unfortunately, the heavens never abided by the wishes of men. Anything that someone hoped not to happen would occur, contradicting expectations. Coco waited with trepidation and finally saw the guild channel chat logs surge. She read them as the words passed, learning that Broken Water Arrow had been slain, Yet the guild leader ordered the others not to tangle with the two perpetrators. Who else could those two be? Coco had no idea what happened, but she was infuriated when she thought of how Gufei, who had gone searching for the man, ended up helping Sword Demon complete his kill. Instead, she then read on and saw Broken Water Arrow take the moral high ground on the guild channel, telling his fellow members not to take things to heart and claiming the need to put the city war as priority. He asked everyone not to make any rash movement out of resentment. Coco was so incensed she had no idea what to say, merely humping as she read on. Observation was one of Zizuyoshin's strong suits, so she could quickly tell that something was wrong from Coco's expression and immediately thought something had happened. She carefully asked the lady about this and Coco answered with a slap on the table. Those two guys. What happened? They still managed to kill off Broken Water Arrow, Coco answered. As long as he can get him to admit to his deeds through his words, all these other things don't matter. Zizuyoshin laughed. That's true. Coco nodded. However, in spite of this, the two men still needed to be severely reprimanded for their reckless action. She could immediately tell from reading through the messages over the guild channel that the two had not actually accomplished a covert assassination but a direct assault on Broken Water Arrow. Thankfully, the guild decided to focus on the bigger picture and did not impulsively hunt down the two for their transgression. Otherwise, both parties would end up letting loose a river of blood, and that would just be a terribly difficult mess to clean up. This was especially true for Coco. While Gufei and Sword Demon could pat their butts, leave without caring for the aftermath, and avoid contact with the other party until they died, the same could not be said for Coco. She could not possibly run away with the two men. She might have blocked Deep Waters, but she would have to speak to him sooner or later. At the end of the day, Coco was the poor wretch that was stuck in middle without any options, so she was also the person who had the most to look forward to if this matter got a peaceful resolution. Don't be angry. Zizuyoshin saw that Coco was still in a huff and quickly consoled the woman. A lady who's angry won't be pretty, and it would hasten aging, creating more wrinkles on the skin. Quick, drink some water and take a deep breath. Think about some happy thoughts. Water? What's the point of drinking water in the game? Coco asked. You can always log off and drink it in real life. HMPH. I'm not going anywhere. I want to wait for those two idiots and give them a proper tongue lashing, Coco said. She reckoned that the two would make their way over to meet them now that they had escaped with their hides intact. She did not bother to message either of the men and continued to sit there, awaiting their return like an empress dowager. Sure enough, in no time at all, Sword Demon's message arrived. Where are you? Maple Leaf Tavern. Coco found it extremely regrettable that her messaging was unable to express the icy tone in her voice. Maple Leaf Tavern. Sword Demon quickly asked people around where this tavern was located and hurried over. Stepping into the establishment, he swept his gaze around the place and saw Coco and the swindler woman sitting together right there in a corner. Sword Demon was about to approach the two ladies, but he saw the clear profile of Coco's face already turned to the side and immediately realized that something was off. This was clearly the sign of the calm before the storm. Sword Demon had no wish to become the seagull caught up in the thunderstorm of rage that was Coco, so he decided to avoid it entirely by pretending to have gotten lost. Heading back to the door, he planned to blindly go around the room once more before taking his leave while feigning ignorance. But his careful plan of sneaking out had actually been seen through by the swindler, getting Coco's attention as she twisted her lips in direction of the man. Crap! The word flashed like a lightning across his sea of thoughts and saw Coco turn her head over. She saw him looking at the door, as if he intended to leave, and immediately stood up from the table. Fuck! Don't you dare run off! As the words left her lips, Coco had already dashed over with fleet foot, the dagger in her hands emitting out a chilling gleam as she streaked over. Sword Demon could tell that it was no ordinary item with a single glance. He did not dare dawdle with his actions, either, and swiftly pulled out his dagger to parry the blow. Both of them had the same agility-based job class, and possessed agile movement. A vigorous fight immediately broke out in that small space of the tavern. Both parties changed positions, rolled about, poked at each other. All sort of skills and methods of attacks were displayed that even the onlookers had trouble keeping up with everything. Finally, Coco managed to step past Sword Demon with a half pirouette and randomly grabbed a stool to smash right into the back of his head. Who told you to run? Coco shouted as the stool connected. Sword Demon felt a thud resonate from the back of his head. The blow did not split his skull open, but he was struck by her bludgeon skill. HMPH. Coco tossed that stool away and came round to Sword Demon's front with her hands by her waist. Sword Demon flashed her a bitter smile, for he was silenced while bludgeon was in effect. It's fine, please carry on with your business." Seeing that some players had cautiously been prepared to leave the tavern, Coco quickly smiled sweetly at these people to set everyone's mind at ease. It was about this time when the bludgeon effect ended, and Zizayoshin had walked over as well. Coco immediately probed, "Where's that guy?" She wanted to know where Gufei was, for she had no wish to repeat her tirade twice. "He logged out," Sword Demon answered meekly. Coco checked her friends list and confirmed he was indeed offline. "What luck. You're the one who's lucky." Sword Demon was being honest. He could already imagine that Coco would most likely find herself flat on the ground in that instant she came charging towards Gufei. "I can attest to this," Zizayoshin said. "That man has no sense of chivalry whatsoever, nor would he care to show moderation just because you're a woman." "Oh, you can tell as well?" Sword Demon was rather surprised, just like Coco. When it came to their gaming skills, Coco was at least weaker than Sword Demon by 2 stages. Even though Parallel World was more subversive as compared to the older MMOs out there, everyone had gotten used to it after playing for such a long time. Neither of them had fought in this game before, but Sword Demon knew Coco was no match for him after a few exchanges, and even sensed that the gap between them was wider than before. There was greater difficulty in this game as compared to the usage of the keyboard and mouse to play games. Sword Demon understood Coco and knew she would not be the sort that would work hard to study the nuances. Her habit was to pick up the attack routines used by the forebears in these games and adequately practice to reach a semblance of skill. After all, in a game with such a high degree of freedom, it was not enough to depend on this alone, so it was not too odd to see Coco's standard fall behind like this. As for Coco, she was all the more aware that she was no match for Sword Demon, but at the same time, she was also keenly cognizant of the fact that Sword Demon would also go easy on her when sparring and would not seek to make her look bad. Thus, while the fight before looked flashy and cool, the two tacitly understood in their hearts that it was all for show. They simply did not think that Zizayoshin would be able to tell as well. "Amazing," Sword Demon commended. To be able to discern the undertone in that exchange meant she had a certain level of skill herself. A swindler might be worth disdaining, but they would be well worthy of praise if they had gaming skills as well. Zizayoshin instead chuckled. "That's nothing. I'm just naturally talented when it comes to sniffing things out if any degree of deception is involved. Come, let's head back to our table." Coco patted the two along. Her anger was appeased after having struck Sword Demon with a stool. Back to their seats in the corner, no one spoke up for a short while. Sword Demon was feeling somewhat uneasy. He felt that it was inappropriate to get a swindler to help, but he sensed that the relationship between Gufei and Zizayoshin was not that simple, so he did not mention it to the man directly. "Don't think too much into things," Zizayoshin suddenly said. "I'm not helping you guys. I simply think that this matter sounds fun and interesting, so I want to play with it a little." "Ah." Sword Demon did not expect his thoughts to be seen through so thoroughly. "Ignore him, he's a stubborn fool." Coco had a good understanding when it came to Sword Demon's personality, so she was more or less able to guess what he was thinking. She was actually a little afraid that he would foolishly reject getting help from a swindler. Coco had no such scruples, so she casually took a jab at Sword Demon while Zizayoshin was coming clean with her position. Sword Demon had no choice but to follow along with the two ladies, asking, "So how's the plan coming along?" Miles said he got Brother Assist to find out more about the situation with the memory black box spell, and he has yet to return with any information. "That item is very important," Coco said. Sword Demon glanced at his friend's list and nodded. "Brother Assist isn't back yet. He's gone for quite some time already." Brother Assist had left to inquire for more information at about the same time Gufei had left to search for Sword Demon. Both men returned, yet there was still no news from Brother Assist. "Don't worry. It's not some rare item, right?" Brother Assist is sure to find out more. "I reckon he caught sight of a post he's interested in and couldn't help himself but join in on the topic for a bit." Sword Demon assured Coco. He knew how passionate Brother Assist was toward his pastime, so the likelihood of this happening was high. I'm so anxious, Coco said. I'm gonna head to the market and take a look. Maybe I might stumble on it. But this plan isn't exactly urgent, is it? Sword Demon asked questioningly. What do you mean? How long do you want me and Deep Waters to not be on speaking terms with each other? Coco pointed her finger fiercely toward Sword Demon. That's not what I meant, Sword Demon hurriedly replied. Leave all this to me. Honestly, it's best if you guys or your friends stay away from every detail of this plan. In the event that Broken Water Arrow and his accomplices are to find out about this, it will certainly heighten the man's vigilance and this will all backfire spectacularly. Instead, Ziziotion said. That's true. Coco nodded. She was considered as one of the more popular figures in Lenian City, after all. Thus, she was sure to draw attention or even rumors if she ran around the market searching for something like Memory Black Box. It was really a huge risk. So what about you, Ziotion? Coco asked. Don't you have accomplices of your own? A partner perhaps? Nope. Ziziotion shook her head. If it's usually just you alone. And don't you need accomplices when doing things? Coco probed. The most important thing between accomplices is trust, but once two swindlers gain each other's trust, can you imagine just how dangerous that is? Ziziotion asked. You must decide if the friendship or the profit is more important. Sword Demon interjected. When there's friendship, there's sure to be profits, but the moment there's profit, suddenly, friendship won't matter. Interpersonal relationships aren't that simple, Ziziotion answered. But doing so much things by yourself is just so tiring. Coco stared at Sword Demon, returning to the subject at hand. Not really. If Brother Assist discovers any weird drops anywhere, he's sure to ask you guys to go slay it. Besides, there's a portion of this plan that requires you guys to make an appearance. Ziziotion smiled. Chapter 518, The Fake Assassination Plan. A day passed in the blink of an eye. Gufei contacted Sword Demon and the others once he got online, showing his concern for their progress in the matter. Meeting them at Maple Leaf Tavern, Gufei saw Sword Demon and Coco were lifelessly sprawled on the table. He called to them and saw the two flutter their eyelids weakly. As if Coco had used the face paint to do it up for them, there were visible dark circles under their eyes. You're here. Sword Demon answered wearily. Are the two of you courting death? Gufei was rather blunt with his words. That was the only thought that crossed his mind when he saw the look these two shared at the moment. We haven't slept for the whole day, and we just got back from grinding. We might very well be inches away from death, Coco replied. What were the two of you busy with? Gufei asked. What were we busy with? Farming for an item, bro. This should have been a job for a mage. Coco shouted at Gufei with what little strength she could muster. I can't do that. I have a lot of self-control when it comes to gaming, and I was already pushing it when I stayed online longer than usual yesterday. Gufei innocently defended himself, which only angered Coco further. She really wanted to beat him up. Of course, there was no need to ask what item the two were busy farming. Did you get it? Gufei wanted to know the result. The two nodded somberly. After inquiring and verifying with various sources last night, Brother Assist finally came back online to relay what he had learned. Since Gufei was not around, he reached out to Sword Demon. The skill scroll for Memory Black Box had a chance of dropping from level 50 humanoid monsters. With that, the three went their separate ways. Ziziotion headed to the market to see if she could purchase it, and Sword Demon went along with Coco to the level 50 grinding map over in Lenian City. Ziziotion found nothing after spending the whole night window shopping, while Sword Demon and Coco had an even tougher time. Level 50 monsters were 10 levels above theirs, and with Sword Demon's skill, he could still efficiently grind when the monsters were around 5 levels above his. But 10 required much more effort on his part. They were not really a proper party if it was just Coco with him, so both really had quite a hard time taking on these monsters. Later, some of the others from Young Master's Elite heard what had happened and came over to lend a hand, treating it as part of their level grinding. It was only natural for the situation to change drastically, now that they had these Apex experts working together for the grind. However, the terrible terrain in Lenian City worked to limit proper execution. If that were not the case, why else would so many players migrate, leaving Linian City to be filled with so many hunters. It could be said that they had grudgingly made it through this overnight grinding session. What made it worse was that, when the sun appeared high up in the sky, the rumored memory black box was still something they only had in their thoughts. The habitual lifestyle practice of these experts had them heading to log off the moment the sun came up. Nonetheless, Sword Demon had trouble sleeping as he tossed and turned after going offline. This unresolved matter bothered him so much that it lingered in his mind. Thus, he struggled to get out of bed and into the game once more. It was also dawn in the game, and under the bright sunlight, Sword Demon saw Coco staring at him and showed a tired smile. "I knew you would be back," Coco said. "Aren't you the same as well?" Sword Demon chuckled. He felt really fortunate when he realized he had a companion to accompany him throughout this ordeal. "Let's go." The two once more set forth to that map where the monsters were located, but without the assistance of those other experts. The two reverted to the careful and more strenuous state of grinding like before. They kept on killing until those experts that had gone offline to catch up on their sleep got online themselves and rejoined the party. They carried on in this manner until the sun began to set. It went so late that even Gufei had gotten online before a monster finally dropped that scroll of memory black box. It was as if the heavy burden those two were shouldering suddenly got lifted, as they instantly wished they could just collapse to the ground. The others had enough sleep, so they immediately left for their various activities after they completed this task. Sword Demon and Coco were beyond exhausted, and they were almost in a drowsy trance as they made their journey back to the tavern. Pass this to Zeoshin when she's here." Coco handed over the spell scroll to Gufei. "She is not here?" Gufei pulled out his friends list, and sure enough, she was not online. "It's your responsibility now." With that, the two struggled to get up from their stools like newly birthed foals. Coco even failed halfway as she called out to Sword Demon. "Quickly help me up. I can't feel my legs anymore." "So dramatic," Gufei muttered as he watched the two support each other as they shuffled their way toward the door. "I really gotta get some sleep. I'll come by once I'm awake again." Sword Demon patted Gufei's shoulder as he passed by him. "When will that be?" Gufei hurried to ask. By the time the two had their fill of sleep, there was no way he would still be online, right? If they slept for only 2 or 3 hours, then they could still somewhat make it. When they got online again, they would most likely enact their plan, and Gufei did not wish to miss that good show. "Oh, that's right. We've yet to fill you in on the plan." Coco seemed to have thought of something, but she quickly waved her hands dismissively. "You can ask Zeoshin when you hand the item over to her. We're taking our leave first." The two thieves departed just like that, leaving Gufei holding onto that spell scroll, contemplating a very important question. If Zeoshin were to never get online, how long would he have to wait? "They shouldn't have given this scroll to me." Despite having such a thought, Gufei did not chase after the two players who were so tired that they could barely stand. Instead, he headed off to the mailbox to send it over to Zeoshin. Even though he did not wish to miss the show, he figured it was better not to delay the business at hand since he was just a spectator to this debacle. It was 6 in the morning. 3 figures sneakily appeared on a certain street in Linian City. This was the time of the day when there would be the least number of players online, a break when the interchange of the gamers who played the game overnight and players who were about to begin their gaming sessions were due to log off early or log on late, respectively. This street was empty at the moment, and the mess of muddy footprints on the street had all been removed by the system's routine refreshes. The three walked down the east entrance of the street toward the west before walking from the west back to the east. Looking around for a moment, someone pointed to the rooftop at one side as another appeared up on that rooftop instantly while another slowly disappeared into thin air. Blink and stealth. These two were naturally Gufei and Sword Demon. Last night, Zeoshin happened to log on just as Gufei was about to mail the scroll over to her. She proceeded to inform him of their plan before finally convincing him to go in accordance to their schedule. Thus, Gufei did not bother playing any longer last night. He had logged off early to rest up for the day so that he could get up earlier the next day, which led to this moment here in this quiet street. "Hey!" Gufei, who had gotten onto the rooftop, poked his head out. "Are you certain he's gonna walk this way? There won't be any surprises, right?" "There's no guarantee, but this is the street closest to the designated log-off point. If he happens to have other business and doesn't head straight to log-off, then he may not take this path. Coco was the one still on the street as she answered Goofy. Then, are you certain he would pass by before 7? Goofy asked again. Hey, of course, I'm not certain. That's why we were here at the earlier time of 6, Coco replied. According to the usual habits of the late-night gamers, most would log out at around 7, but Coco had taken the precaution to get everyone in place at the earlier time of 6 to cover their bases. I hope he would log off earlier, Goofy mumbled as he retracted his head. He was now prone on the rooftop to reduce his visibility. Call me when he's here, Goofy shouted. Got it. Sword Demon replied. He was soon gone from the naked eye. I'll leave the two of you waiting here. I gotta go and get ready too, Coco said as she turned to leave the street. Lying prone on the rooftop was the most Goofy could do to hide himself, while Sword Demon down below, after having come into contact with someone like Goofy, knew very well now that stealth was not entirely reliable. He spotted a stack of filled sacks in front of a random house, so he darted over behind it, only peeking half his head out from behind the cover from time to time to take note of any movement down the street. Zizzyoshin's plan was far more complicated than what they had thought, and it was not as simple as her acting in place of another workshop, attempting to recruit Broken Water Arrow with the skill scroll in hand. Goofy originally thought that he had no business with this part of the operation, and the show he wanted to watch was Zizzyoshin getting the record of the conversation and showing it to Deep Waters. He was utterly mistaken, for what was important was finding a way to get that conversation on record. Trust. They first had to swindle Broken Water Arrow's trust. Broken Water Arrow would of course not reveal his scheme arbitrarily to a complete stranger whom he was suspicious with, so they must lower his guard down first in order to successfully extract this confession. This was originally a rather thorny issue, but they were given a window of opportunity since both Sword Demon and Goofy had coincidentally made an attempt on his life and succeeded once. Right now, Broken Water Arrow was already aware that Sword Demon no longer cared for what Deep Waters think and had made the conscious decision to slay him until the end. If he struck once, there was bound to be a second time, and this second time became a part in this drama that Zizzyoshin had concocted. This second attempt was nothing but Sword Demon and Goofy play acting. Zizzyoshin would appear in a critical moment to save Broken Water Arrow. Clever. Too brilliant. This way, getting close to Broken Water Arrow will be a piece of cake. Zizzyoshin decided to go with the flow and use the situation to her advantage, using Sword Demon's first assassination attempt to be the first act of this entire operation, which garnered the praise of Royal God Call and War Without Wounds. These two already dropped all pretense the moment they saw this pretty lady. It's not that simple, Zizzyoshin said. After all, I'm going to be talking business with him soon after, so he'll immediately understand that my rescue attempt is not simply a chance meeting. However, having been on the receiving end of my kind assistance, he's sure to soften to me, which itself is an opportunity to get him to let his guard down and let me in. There are still plenty of things we will need to do after this, but that will be my job. You guys just need to act your part, and everything will turn out well. They did not have enough manpower to properly act out a good show, so they had no choice but to grab a Royal God Call and War Without Wounds along as support, working together with Zizzyoshin to act the part of the rescuers. After all, the strength that Sword Demon and Goofy possessed was undeniable. Randomly getting any player to beat these two would be far too ridiculous. In this time, everybody also considered that, given how powerful Goofy was, would it still be too unconvincing for him to lose just with the addition of two helpers? In the end, Goofy patted his chest and guaranteed that he would give a credible performance for the defeat. This was actually a skill in itself, and Goofy was no stranger to it. This was something he would often do when he sparred with others, especially with his elders. The lowest form of this act was to nakedly allow the opponent to win, which was far more painful of a reality than directly beating the opponent. A more skilled practitioner would be able to enact an exchange where both parties fighting would be aware of the skill disparity, but the audience would be left in the dark. The audience might see it as a tie, but the combatants themselves would know who was truly victorious. Meanwhile, the level that Goofy was currently at could be considered as the highest attainment. Even the opponent he was facing would be unaware, allowing them to emerge victorious gleefully without even realizing that Gufei had secretly allowed for the win to happen. Chapter 519, a hard-to-come-by opponent. Occasionally, players would pass by the quiet street, but as long as their faces were not covered or hidden under a hat and their gait was lively, then they were surely not someone from Deep Freeze. Aside from the female members from Deep Freeze that were unwilling to smear their faces with paint, everyone else shared the same getup. While they had fun playing around in the jungle, the look was still something they felt a little embarrassed to wear in public, so they would keep their faces covered or hide behind the cover of a hat the moment they left the jungle, their footsteps looking timid and sneaky. It was around 6:30 a.m. Having been camping out here for half an hour, Gufei and the others finally spotted the skulking figure that they had been waiting for on the other end of the street. Sword Demon immediately called this out over the party channel when he saw this. Target spotted, but there's an issue. What's the issue? They asked. He's not alone, Sword Demon replied. Atop that roof, Gufei carefully poked his head out and saw a bunch of figures walking down the street. There was no doubt that Broken Water Arrow was among them, and a number of players flanked him on both sides. It must be that bastard Deep Water's meddling, calling those people to accompany and protect him, Coco said through gritted teeth. Actually, it's nothing really. Easy as pie, Gufei commented. We can't do that, Sword Demon hurriedly interrupted. He knew what Gufei meant, but everyone had done all this not just to protect Deep Waters but also the comrades in his guild. Sword Demon simply could not just casually sacrifice all these men over this matter. You guys come to a decision. Tell me once you've made up your mind. Gufei grabbed a hold of his sword from his inventory and pulled it out to his side. He had already come to peace with being the hitman here. He found this whole affair, what with the guild and comrades, to be far too complex. He did not share the same sentiment toward these men like Coco or Sword Demon, so he figured it was better for him to abstain from voicing an opinion. What are your thoughts on this, Zeoshin? Coco immediately sought for Zeoshin's opinion, seeing as she was the one who had planned the whole operation. You guys can decide. Zeoshin also decided to stay out of it. Thus, Sword Demon and Coco were the only two left to argue over it, even as their target got closer and closer. Just do it. Coco gritted her teeth and sent that message. Sword Demon was shocked. His suggestion had been to forego this chance for now, yet he did not expect Coco not to share the same thoughts as him this time. These fools, it's fine if we teach them a lesson, Coco said. But, Sword Demon wanted to speak up, but Gufei unexpectedly stood up on that rooftop and leapt off it. Sword Demon, you don't have to attack. I'll do it myself. Gufei sent this message, even as the crowd discovered him. How could Sword Demon choose to shy away now that they were at this stage? However, without another word, he left that pile of sacks and quietly made his way to Gufei's side. He's the one I want. I have no business with the rest of you, so you may all take your leave. Gufei pointed at Broken Water Arrow. It was already a habit of his to throw out a necessary reminder like this. None of these men backed away, instead, all of them stepped forward in unison. Gufei turned over to Sword Demon. Look, I gave them a choice, yet they still chose to die. That should ease your burden a little. Sword Demon laughed bitterly. What sort of choice was this? Why would anyone leave nonchalantly just because they heard such a statement? You're the one who's dead meat. The guild leader already guessed that you guys would make another attempt. Someone chuckled coldly. He already guessed it, yet he still called you guys over? Your relationship with him must usually be pretty terrible, huh? Gufei used the corner of his clothes to wipe his blade. It had gotten a little dirty when he had been prone up on the rooftop. Compared to the mage robe that he was not particularly fond of, Gufei was more concerned that his weapon was not shiny enough. Enough with your rubbish. That man yelled, leading his comrades to charge at him. From the job class composition of these men, Gufei and Sword Demon could indeed tell that this was planned out. A warrior, thief, archer, mage, priest, and knight. Aside from the outlandish fighter, there was an equal representation of the 6 job classes that a veteran party would not lack. It was no easy task to form a party that had all these job classes present like this in Linian City. Most parties in Linian City consist of mainly hunters, and all the other job classes were nothing more than embellishments. Don't hesitate. Gufei clapped Sword Demon before he took the lead. bounding forward to receive the charge head-on. A single blink allowed him to appear behind them before these men even realized what was happening. Carving out a keen slash of twin incineration with a quick whirl, he instantly turned the three to dust. Not even a shred of mercy. Sword Demon was a little aghast. He had fought with Gufei side by side plenty of times, yet every instance had always been with actual enemies. It was a little different right now, yet the decisiveness of his blows remained unchanged. Insta-killing 3 other players in a single stroke, the intensity of Gufei's killing intent left the others stunned involuntarily. The wind was taken right out of their cells after they witnessed the prowess of this mage. In Yoshin's words, their hearts had already begun to soften and waver. Nevertheless, they talked too big a game at the start, so they could not possibly just give up and flee now. These men steeled themselves and continued their charge, otherwise, there would not have been an idiom like "it's hard to get off once atop a tiger." Who would have thought that Gufei would not bother to keep up the pressure after such a tremendous performance, though, instead, he turned his head to stare at Broken Water Arrow. "Comrade Old Broken, they are no match for me. You shouldn't drag others into your own grudges, let them go." "Well said." Broken Water Arrow actually nodded, addressing these players in a somber note, "Everyone, please leave. This man and I here have things to discuss." Old Broken. Everyone understood what he meant, yet not one of them moved. Humans were funny like that. Nobody was willing to die together with others when people were expected to share the same fate, but the moment someone stepped out to take one for the team, everyone would fight to express their magnanimity and valiance. "This is my business, it has nothing to do with the rest of you. You guys should leave first," Broken Water Arrow said. "No. One for all for one. It's either we leave together or die together," these men yelled. All right. Gufei had enough of this. "This has gone in the opposite direction as I have imagined. You guys can all die together, then." Actually, there was a reason Gufei had been so vicious in his attack. A single move from him suppressed the opponent, showing them just how terrifying it was to go up against him, before insulting Broken Water Arrow with his words. That man was busy trying to win these people's hearts for his scheme, so Gufei predicted that he would heroically step forward and shoulder his problems to persuade the rest to run away. Despite the fact that Gufei had guessed this would happen, the end result was something he had not foreseen. The whole lot of them actually stepped forward in a show of fortitude, putting up a united front such that none was willing to leave. What made it all the more unbearable was just how cliché this was. Indeed, the human heart is utterly unfathomable. Gufei sighed to himself and let loose streaks after streaks of flames in waves, as Gufei let his sword fly. Gufei knew that even though Sword Demon had stepped out, his heart was still in a knot. So he did not wish to distress the man any further and took the initiative to cleanly slay the players present. Why even bother? With this final sigh from Gufei, the other players that were here to escort Broken Water Arrow got wiped out. None of them even managed to dirty any part of Gufei's clothes before they got sent to the spawn point. Gufei held his sword by his side, as he turned to look at Broken Water Arrow. "You're skilled." Broken Water Arrow nodded his head. Gufei raised his eyebrow. "Easy as pie. I'm not like them." Broken Water Arrow began to roll up his sleeves. "I'll be the judge of that, if you are truly different from the others." "Don't worry, I'll be very thorough." Gufei raised his sword. "Just so you should know, luck was on your side when you managed to kill me last night," Broken Water Arrow said. "I almost forgot about that. Have you not mentioned it now?" "Indeed, I've already slain you last night." Gufei scratched his head mockingly. "You're the one who's gotten lucky, then." "I'll be all the more experienced with killing you again since I've already done so before." HMPH. Broken Water Arrow barked a short and mirthless laugh before striking out abruptly. With a turn of his bomb, a cold light flashed. A burst of wind was already upon Gufei, who quickly turned his head to the side to dodge. He felt a cool sensation on his cheek and his fingers went to touch it. A streak of fresh blood was drawn. Looking back at Broken Water Arrow, the man revealed a look of astonishment when Gufei was able to dodge that attack. Meanwhile, the weapon he was holding was not an elaborate longbow like what Royal God Call and the others would often use, but a short crossbow, instead. Furthermore, his right hand was raised flat and his left hand was supporting it from below. It did not look like he was firing an arrow but more like he was shooting a pistol. Gufei suddenly came to a realization. If this man was indeed as the rumor implied and was an ex-soldier, that meant that his repertoire of skills was not limited to just military knowledge, close combat fighting, and other such skills but marksmanship as well. Perhaps that was what he truly excelled in. Against such a skill, how would normal people like Royal Godcall and the others, who had never even touched a firearm in their lives before, reach his level of expertise? Thinking of this, he saw Broken Water Arrow's index finger twitch once more, likely to pull the trigger. Gufei quickly pirouetted to his side with nimble footwork as another streak glinted past coldly right at where he had been standing moments ago. What a good eye in reaction time! Broken Water Arrow marveled without batting an eyelid. The four fingers on his right hand that were originally under his left hand moved to cup over it, perfectly covering the movement of his right index finger and making it impossible for Gufei to judge when he would be firing his shot. The best way to defeat your opponent is to shoot them. Gufei could hear his father's words resonate in his ears. Naturally, considering all the kung fu Gufei had learned by then, he knew that what his father had said was nothing but an analogy that meant that modern weaponry possessed greater speed and lethality than kung fu. Still, that did not specifically mean that firearms were any stronger than kung fu. That statement would be quite fitting when applied to Broken Water Arrow, since the crossbow he had in his hand fired arrows much faster than the bows that Royal Godcall and the others used. What made it worse was how the movement he exerted to achieve this was much smaller, so now that his left hand was covered over his right trigger finger, there was not even a margin of action Gufei could use to detect a coming attack. Gufei felt he was in a truly prickly situation against this level of concealment. This feeling he had was really similar to meeting an opponent that was using a pistol in real life. However, in real life, the marksmanship of the shooter still had to be considered even when holding a gun. The average person who got a hold of one might even be unable to hit a target standing 10 meters away. But if Broken Water Arrow was truly an ex-soldier, that meant he would have a mastery of this. Now that he was in parallel world, the aid that he would receive from the system's aim correction would only make it all the more difficult to contend with such an opponent. However, in the face of such complications, Gufei still happily revealed a smile. Compared to an opponent who was well versed in kung fu, which he would have the opportunity to meet occasionally in real life, such an opponent was all the more precious and harder to come by. It was truly splendid that he was able to play this game. Chapter 520, an expert in real combat. What's the situation? What's happening? Let me see. Two men were standing atop a roof several streets away from that street. They were the priest Young Master Han and Knight Brother Assist. The latter was wearing an anxious expression as he yelled at the side. Young Master Han heard him and casually handed the spyglass over to him, looking thoughtful. Who the heck would start drinking so early in the morning? Brother Assist swept his gaze past the man's right hand, which was lightly swirling a glass of liquor, when he took that spyglass over. They were at the tavern where he had been drinking liquor, so Young Master Han directly took the glass along as he went up to the roof. It was about 6:30 in the morning, so most of the patrons in the establishment were there to rest up. At the moment, not many were drinking in the tavern. An alcohol aficionado, of course. Young Master Han answered as he raised that glass and quaffed it at one go. Are you planning to return this thing back? Brother Assist took her eyes off the spyglass and asked. I already forgot who owns it, Young Master Han answered. Tut tut. Brother Assist adjusted the angle and asked, where are they? Young Master Han lifted his hand and jerked his head in a direction, and Brother Assist hummed before asking, hey, where are they? Didn't you say that there's a whole bunch of them? That was then. They're all dead now, Young Master Han replied. Was it Miles? He's really getting stronger and stronger. Brother Assist's heart trembled slightly as he said this. It was no more than 2 minutes since Young Master Han last saw the two parties clash. You should already know this, but when going up against such commoners, he has never once gotten serious before. The phrase he often says, easy as pie, isn't just a jest, he's sincerely stating the facts, Young Master Han replied. Is that guy Broken Water Arrow? Brother Assist asked. Yeah. What stance is that? Brother Assist was wondering when he suddenly yelled, he's on the offensive. In that moment when he shouted that, the spyglass was no longer in his hands as Young Master Han snatched it over and began to observe the clash. Bro. brother assist felt like crying, yet no tears came out. He was barely able to get a few glimpses in when all was well, but the spyglass was gone the moment something exciting happened. Brother assist felt as if he were being bullied like a miserable and shabby scholar. Speaking of which, he was a dark knight, so he should not have difficulties taking down a light priest. But the problem was that he did not have the guts to do it. Even though the man before him was a light priest, his heart was at a frightening state of black. Back on that street the two men were watching. The fighting had indeed resumed. Surprisingly, it was neither Gufei nor Broken Water Arrow who had made the first move but Sword Demon. Instead, Gufei and Broken Water Arrow were focused on each other, causing this situation to turn into a duel. Sword Demon was determined to make his existence known, so he suddenly activated his Shadow Mist Assault and dashed brusquely toward Broken Water Arrow. However, Broken Water Arrow did not seem to be perturbed by this sudden attack. In that instant when Sword Demon acted, he made his move as well and swiftly took a step to his left. Gufei sighed. While the distance that Sword Demon's Shadow Mist Assault could cover was what gave the skill its destructive power and impetus, it was also one of its weaknesses. Considering that this charge was not instantaneous like Blink, no matter how quick his movement speed was, it would never be quicker than a stab from an arm extension. When encountering such a high-speed movement and the 2-second invisibility for the first time, people would probably find it difficult to defend themselves effectively against it. However, after experiencing it once and being able to mentally prepare themselves for such an attack, Gufei and other kung fu practitioners like him would not find it to be as scary as that first time. It all depended on how Sword Demon would modify his attack, predict a response, and utilize that 2-second of invisibility. All that would require experience and technique. It was something that took Gufei 20 years of cumulative and methodical learning to cultivate such a standard. For a gamer like Sword Demon who had only played around with the mouse and keyboard in other MMOs, forget about playing for 20 years, Gufei did not even think there would be much of a difference in skill between Sword Demon and any random ant that sold onions by the roadside. Seeing the action Broken Water Arrow had taken, Gufei already knew better than to be too optimistic with Sword Demon's attempt. Even though Broken Water Arrow was focused on Gufei, the fact remained that he did ignore Sword Demon's presence. Gufei even realized that the position Broken Water Arrow had chosen from the start seemed to be a precaution against an attack from Sword Demon. The man already had his eyes on Sword Demon the moment the thief made his move, following his every action closely and precisely. In the time it took for Sword Demon to surge forward to him, he had consecutively taken 2 steps to the side, a clean dodge behind a pile of sacks stacked by the side of the street. Sword Demon initiated his ambush from behind one of these piles, and Broken Water Arrow used this very same method to delay his attack. Sword Demon's target was no longer in his sight, and the shortest path he would take toward him would result in him running straight into the sacks. As such, he would have to run in an arc or cut in at a certain point, forcibly extending the distance he had to cover. This in turn gave Broken Water Arrow more time to take another step. It was also very possible that the increased distance would be too much for the skill to last until he reached his target. That would indeed be a true tragedy. However, there was no way Sword Demon would make such an amateur mistake now that he had a good understanding of how skills in Parallel World worked. Gufei was confident he had enough time. Seeing how he continued his assault. Activate my invisibility, dash forth after rounding the corner, and attack his flank. That was what Sword Demon was thinking, yet he did not expect that, just as he was about to carry this sequence of actions, the pile of sacks suddenly began tumbling off one by one. Fuck! Gufei could not help but yell out. He did not expect for Broken Water Arrow to do that. Gufei specialized in combat that utilized all sorts of technique and potential adaptations, yet he had never once thought of simply using the environment and items around him for a fight like what Broken Water Arrow was doing right now. Sword Demon was all the more surprised by this unexpected development, but he was lucky that the falling sacks did not pin him down. He quickly dodged to the side, wasting more distance and duration of his skill in doing so. Wanting to double back, he saw that these sacks were now littered all over the ground and how Broken Water Arrow was still pulling away from Sword Demon by standing far away at the base of that wall. Sword Demon regretfully cancelled his skill, for he knew that he did not have enough time with the skill to reach Broken Water Arrow anymore. Dodge quickly! Gu Fei shouted hurriedly. He did not think that sword demon would actually stand there and not even move after canceling his skill. Just as those words left his mouth, a cold glint from Broken Water Arrow's crossbow flashed. After having successfully distanced himself from the attack, the man had finally managed to maintain his balance and raise his right hand to fire the crossbow, attacking in that moment when Sword Demon paused. Sword Demon tried his best to dodge this shot, but he of course failed to do so. He quickly turned around and headed toward Gu Fei, a crossbow bolt stuck fast on his forehead. Gu Fei gave a long sigh. He had witnessed too many instances of people getting insta-killed, mostly by his own hands, that he was already used to such an outcome. He really believed that a bolt from Broken Water Arrow's crossbow would instantly finish off Sword Demon. Alas, it appeared that his attack was not that powerful. Hide to the side. Gu Fei pushed Sword Demon behind a sack pile. Sword Demon was depressed, but he knew that he was of no help here. He was the dignified #1 expert in MMOs of yesteryear, yet he now found himself to be in a state where he was unable to intervene in a confrontation between two experts in this game. What pain he must be feeling. The slighted Sword Demon shrank back behind the sack pile, even forgetting to pull off that crossbow bolt that was still stuck on his forehead. Broken Water Arrow stood where he was, seemingly uninterested in chasing after the kill on Sword Demon. His crossbow was pointed toward Gu Fei once more as his left hand was back to covering his right index finger. "Hey!" It was Coco's voice that came through the party channel this time. "Should we help him?" Coco was a thief, so she was capable of using stealth. She was actually standing on the same street but was watching the fight at a relatively safe distance. The original plan was for Ziziocean to come in and aid Broken Water Arrow in fending off Gu Fei, yet now it appeared as if the tables had turned, which was quite the blow to their self-esteem. Sword Demon's self-esteem was indeed severely wounded this time, but Gu Fei remained as calm as ever. "Do you think he needs any help right now? I don't mean him, I'm talking about you too, bro." Coco clarified. "Don't disturb him, let the man concentrate." Sword Demon quickly said. Broken Water Arrow's crossbow was still pointed toward Gu Fei, yet the man was still chatting with Coco. "Do your best." Coco shouted. "Shoot already." "Why aren't you taking the shot?" Gu Fei asked Broken Water Arrow as he shrugged. "Where's your blink?" "Why haven't you blinked?" Broken Water Arrow answered with a question of his own to Gu Fei. The man did not shrug but just stood firmly against Gu Fei. "Guess," Gu Fei said. "After using the spell plenty of times, his blink has improved to the point he could reach a maximum distance of 6 meters. Broken Water Arrow was at least 10 meters away right now. It was not that Gu Fei did not wish to use it, but that he was unable to completely close up the gap with a single cast. It seemed that Broken Water Arrow had predicted that this was his biggest trump card, though, as he was being cautious toward it. Naturally, this meant that Gu Fei should not let the man see through his intention. His reply of guess apparently agitated Broken Water Arrow a little. Blink was not a spell in common circulation, and the officials were particularly strict toward safeguarding the information of such high-level skills and spells. Broken Water Arrow had no idea about the spell's cooldown or the distance it could cover, so he had problems judging why Gu Fei had yet to use the spell. "Speaking of which, could the reason you're not shooting at the moment be the fact that you've run out of bolts?" Gu Fei suddenly asked. "You guess as well," Broken Water Arrow retorted word for word. But he was inwardly shocked because Gu Fei had indeed hit the nail on the head. His 6-shot repeating crossbow followed the make of a revolver, holding a total of 6 crossbow bolts within its repeater, where every pull of the trigger would automatically fire and load the new bolt housed within the magazine. With only 6 bolts within, every pull of the trigger sent forth a bolt, meaning, he had enough for 6 shots in a single use. After the 6 bolts were expended, he would have to reload the crossbow, and with the need to remove the empty magazine for a loaded one, and the process of this was far more troublesome than the knocking of arrows on a bow. At the moment, he had already fired 3 shots. Broken Water Arrow did not expect Gu Fei to be such a difficult foe that the shots he fired at that distance before would actually miss its target. Furthermore, the attack power his equipment provided was not particularly high. It was fortunate that he was going up against a mage, so he believed he would be able to slay Gu Fei if he used these shots in conjunction with his skills. Snipe. Utilizing this skill would increase the speed and damage of his bolts, and Broken Water Arrow was a little remorseful that he had not used it from the get-go. Gufei barely avoided that first bolt he fired. Perhaps, there was a high possibility that the bolt would have found its target had he used snipe with that shot. Meanwhile, the other two shots he had sent after was used as a means of misinformation. He knew that Gufei was an expert, so the man would have likely adapted to his attack speed by now after experiencing it once. He was hoping that Gufei would get used to it further before finally increasing the speed of his final 3 shots he still held to get a confirmed kill.